Everyone, please rise. We'll be led in prayer by Alderman Joe DeLucia.
Almighty God, we ask for your blessing upon the members of this council as we assemble here in this chamber to conduct the ongoing business of our city. With your guidance, we will strive to ensure that all our decisions are for the common good, and your inspiration will instill respect, compassion, and thoughtfulness in all our deliberations. Give us the strength and wisdom to lead by example as the people's representatives, and that peace and harmony will mark all our proceedings and keep us faithful to the trust placed in us by the citizens of your community. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Alderwoman Steph Burnham, please.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So much for the J. Yeah, we're going to be here for a while.
Entertain a motion, please, for the adoption of the minutes of April 1st, 11th, and 15th, 2019. Pro Tem Nash, second Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous, opposed 7-0. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. This is the city manager's report for May 6th, 2019. I attended the monthly SCCO COG meeting, seat and harbor management meetings. I attended the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities meeting that was held at the Groton Town Hall for Municipal Unity Week. CCM CEO Joseph DeLong and CCM Deputy Director Ron Thomas gave an update on the key state local issues before the legislatures. I met with department heads regarding the budget. Sharon Pessini, Senior Vice President from United Way, also attended the meeting and thanked the city employees for the continued support and donations. I also met with the fire chiefs regarding the apparatus inventory for the fire study. I had the pleasure of attending the annual volunteer recognition breakfast that was held May 2nd at the Senior Center. There were 132 senior volunteers that were recognized for their efforts. Thank you to those who volunteer and those who donated items and participated in this yearly event to make it a success. The city is applying for a competitive transportation alternative program, TAP grant, through the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments. The project, if awarded, will improve mobility along New London Turnpike from Norwich Town to Melrose Park Road in the vicinity of Three Rivers Community College by improving sidewalks, ADA accessibility, and providing almost 3 miles of biking facilities. The total project cost is $982,800, with the city providing a 20% match for construction and design. I attended the presentation today at CCOG, and they'll be making a decision, adding that in the next couple of weeks on the grant. 8 students from the Teacher Global Studies Magnet Middle School had a tour of several city departments on April 24th. City Clerk Betsy Barrett led the tour with my assistant Jackie Barbaroso and the Mayor's Secretary Bonnie Kuprick. The students visited the clerk's office, assessor's, finance, and treasurer's office, city manager's office, and council chambers. Department heads gave a brief overview of their office function, and the students ended in the council chambers where Mayor Nystrom, Alderman Stacy Gould, and Joanne Philbrick answered questions and encouraged the students to take part in city government. The city received several new pieces of professional artwork from artists from the Chinese Artists Association as a cultural exchange and act of appreciation. Mayor Nystrom and Alderman Sam Browning received the art from the visiting artist, who also visited Slater Museum and Norwich Free Academy as part of the tour. 11 youths from the Norwich schools and organizations were recognized for their efforts on Friday, May 3rd, in honor of National Youth Day in council chambers. Recipients were Bailey Buchan, John Coleman, Vivian Ha, Cameron Corrance, Samarie Burlingham McCord, Leopoldine Bertrand, Noreen Andrade, Elise Sperry, Eddie Cruz, Cami Hawkins, and Michaela Guerman. That's the last one. I apologize for butchering some of the names. Congratulations on your accomplishments. Angelo Callis from Norwich Youth and Family Services coordinated the event to honor the nominees. That concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you. Just for the record, the report about the 11 youths, I also participated in that, just for the public's information. It was a great afternoon. Are there questions for the city manager? Yes, Alderwoman Filbert?
I have two questions. In regards to the fire chiefs and the apparatus inventory, is this moving along and expected to be on target or earlier?
It might be earlier. It's moving along pretty well.
Okay, and then my second question or comment is in regards to the TAP grant. Refresh my memory, I thought we passed a resolution that said that any grant application that required matching funds had to come through the city council for approval. Did I misunderstand that?
Well, we haven't formally accepted it. It would come to that before the funds are appropriated. But we have to get it before we come, and we don't have to accept it. So it's, depending on how you want to sequence it, the council has to approve the grant. So we can't do it unilaterally. So you are the final step in the process of the grant.
Okay, but why would you, I'm confused, why would you apply for a grant without knowing that you were going to have council approval? It was my understanding that the process, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the process was in order to apply for a grant, the person or the entity would have to come to the council first to say, we would like to apply for a grant that requires matching funds. Do we have your endorsement?
I guess I thought it went through the Public Works Committee, and I assumed that was an arm of the council, and they were so informed. So that was the assumption I made.
Are there other questions? Yes, Alderman Browning.
This is not on the report, but it was a question to the city manager and through it to the Corporation Council about the status of 16 Falls Avenue, which is a property, I believe, that's being prepared for a RFP.
My understanding is that that is on the list to be presented to the Public Works Committee for its consideration and determination. So it's been referred, is what I understand.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you. Mr. Manager.
You're welcome.
Citizen comment on resolutions?
I declare citizen comment on resolutions open. The first person signed up is Mr. Marvin Cerruto.
Marvin Cerruto, 100 Star Street, Norwich, Connecticut, United States of America. I would like to address resolutions 11 through 19, neither in favor of nor against, opposed to, but 11 through 18 are amendments. And then we get to a preliminary. So we're going to discuss amendments before a preliminary, and the preliminary assumes adoption upon amendments. I'm confused. The language is confusing, and I know it may seem to be a moot point, but let me remind you about language. It transforms into action. $3 million on paper is $3 million out of our pocket. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Tucker Braddock, please.
Good evening, council. My name is H. Tucker Braddock. I live at 868 Scotland Road, Norwich, Connecticut. And I am here at this juncture to thank the sponsors for an action that I would hope would pass this evening, and that is Resolution 17 regarding $120,000, which would be part of a matching grant from a small harbor improvement program called CHIP. This is all sponsored through the Port Authority. And it's an 80-20 split, and the intent of this money is to fix and improve the safety of the docks out in front of Howard Brown Park, as well as the ones by the canoe and boat kayak launching. And I will remain here. I'd like to thank Mayor Nystrom and Alderwoman Stacy Burnham and Alderman Joe DeLucia for representing and sponsoring this. And I will remain here until such time that we get to the Resolution 17 to answer any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Terry Martin.
Hello, I'm Gerald Martin, Gillette Road, Norwich, Connecticut. I'm speaking of resolution number 10. Those who know me know how deeply I care for my mom, especially after my dad's passing. A night of music would be a very nice event at Howard T. Brown Park before the Norwich Chambers Rock the Docks and Rocking the Green music series. I would like to do this to bring people to our waterfront and to enjoy what I feel is one of Norwich's best assets, the waterfront. I would like to thank Mayor Nystrom, Alderwoman Gould, Alderman Nash for sponsoring this resolution. I know Alderwoman Philbrick, you would if you could, too. I would also like to thank those on the council that approve of this endeavor, as well as the residents of Norwich who will hopefully enjoy a nice evening of music. I'd like to say thank you to Patrick McGoffin to the Norwich Public Works, Chief Patrick Daly to the Norwich Police Department, John Solomon, City Manager, Chief Tracy Montoya, Norwich Fire Department, Angela Adams, and the Norwich Chamber of Commerce. Without this team, this event could never take place. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Have a great day.
Thank you. Dennis Slopak, please.
Dennis Slopak, 8 North 2nd Avenue in Taftville. I am here to beseech you to fully fund the Board of Education's budget request. There are 2 reasons for this. One, in the 8 years I have served on the board, we have never been fully funded. And in the 4 years prior to that, the school budget received no additional dollars. Hence, the schools are essentially operating on the equivalent of the year 2007 dollars. Even worse, the council happily pays NFA's yearly increases and leaves the board to cut from our elementary students. This has left the schools with terrible shortages of supplies. 2 weeks ago, I had to go to Staples and buy several hundred pencils and white board erasers for Uncas School because there was no money left in the budget to do so. Secondly, we have just hired a remarkable new superintendent of schools that has a degree in education finances and actually teaches this as an adjunct professor at Providence College. I am asking you not to tie her hands behind her back before she even starts. Make the proper investment and we can achieve the results you seek, which will make this community a desirable place to live, work, and invest. Everyone in this room has had the opportunity to make whatever we have made of ourselves in our lives. If a child cannot read well and do basic math by grade 3, they could be lost forever. Please do not deny these children the same opportunities we have all had. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yvette Giacaruso.
Yvette Giacaruso, 192 Whiteman Avenue, taxpayer in Norwich. On December 21st, 2018, a letter was sent from the Board of Ed to the city manager, the mayor, and city council members concerning our shortfall in funding. The letter was a heads-up communication. We explained what cost savings were made through our vendors to lowering their prices if they could, which amounted to $10,000. Our big savings came from the high-deductible HSA health insurance program for our employees saving. As of October 18th, 2018, were projected at $1 million. Also found an additional savings of $300,000 for a total anticipation savings of $1.3 million. That was great, but we were still short. So our budget is divided into 3 pots. NFA, 1/3, special ed, 1/3, and Norwich Public Schools, 1/3. As you can see, this leaves almost no wiggle room. There is no wiggle room with NFA. They give us the bill, and we must pay the amount. Our special ed population is large, with students having serious needs. It's a mandated program, therefore we must provide the required services. We have created programs in districts so we can bring students back from out of districts to their local schools. A lot of savings with returning students to their home districts. And with 600+ English language learners, we must provide those students with their mandated services. If we want to make Norwich a showcase city, our educational system must also be a showcase system. Each board member has an adopted city council member. The council members come and visit our schools. We want you to see our population and what students, teachers, and administrators are achieving. Parents want their kids to succeed, so the kids need the necessary tools to help them accomplish this goal. So I'm asking that you fully fund our school budget for the next fiscal year. You are funding students that will be our doctors, lawyers, teachers, etc. Education is the building blocks of the future. With a strong foundation in education, our community will flourish. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Kulos?
Good evening. My name is Mark Kulos. I live at 327 Broadway in Norwich. I'm also an elected member of the Norwich Board of Education. I'm speaking in favor of resolution number 12. I was recently talking to a friend of mine. She said she was able to teach a kindergarten class the difference between wants and needs. A need is something essential to life: food, water, shelter, clothing, the basics necessary for survival. A want is something you would like to have, something that in some way enhances or improves our lives above the baseline existence. Budgets are really the balance between wants and needs. We try to pay for everything we need, the absolute minimum necessary to meet the expectations of the community as prescribed by law. Then once those needs are met, we try to improve our situation with the wants, to lift ourselves above the lowest level of existence. Every department tries to get its needs met, then adds in a prioritized list of wants. The last few years, almost everyone is scrambling just to get their needs met. What are the needs of the Norwich school budget? To educate our children, we need teachers, school buildings, books and supplies, and buses to transport the children. Sounds simple. But to have teachers, we need health insurance, retirement plans, workers' compensation, substitutes and paraprofessionals to aid in the classroom, student testing and evaluation programs to comply with state and federal mandates, professional training programs, administrators to guide the workforce, a business office to pay people and to oversee all of the complex human resource requirements, and so on. Every category in the proposed education budget is just as complex and is a need. There are no wants in the school budget. All of our requests are necessary. Please at least support our baseline level of existence. Please vote to support fully funding the needs of the Norwich Public Schools. Please vote yea for Resolution 12 this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there other members who'd like to address the council on the resolutions? Please. Again, please state your name and address for the public record.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Janice Sawicki. I live at 39 Andrea Lane in Norwich. And basically, I've been tied to the Norwich Public Schools forever. I love school. I've always loved school ever since I was 4 years old when I was in kindergarten. It's hard to keep me out of schools, and Abby probably says, my gosh, she's retired, and I still can't get rid of her. I pop up everywhere. But my heart is in this. And this is pretty informal, what I'm saying, and I don't know if it's going to even make any sense, but I need to say it. At a recent Democratic town meeting, I chirped up and I said, you know, every year we talk about the same old thing with a few different words, the same strategies. We've got to do something different to earn money for the public schools. And I'm probably way off base with this, and I've been retired for 5 years. The brain doesn't work like it used to work, and Abby can probably help me with this. But I've just been thinking different things, different strategies. And I've just been thinking about all of the money that just goes down the tubes in this city, in this town, that has to do with education. I'm sure you probably all agree or know that as of October 1st, and I believe that's still the way it is, tuition that's paid out of the education budget for all students attending NFA comes as a big bill. It's a 5-figure amount for each student attending NFA for Norwich. Surrounding towns as well, but we're talking about Norwich tonight. Now, this money comes out of the education budget depending on how many students. If you do the multiplication, take out your calculators, take out your phones. I don't have the exact number right here, and this is why I thought maybe Abby could help me out. It is a hell of a lot of money. And here's the thing that just makes me nuts. I've been doing a lot of stuff with adult ed this year, and I've been seeing the numbers of kids, the young adults, that by law they have to attend school. If those kids get kicked out of NFA, or if they leave NFA even as early as October 2nd, there is no rebate. There is no money that comes back to the Norwich Public Schools. That money is just gone with the wind. I don't know what NFA is doing with it. It's a beautiful campus. They offer a tremendous amount of things. But we all know that NFA is in big trouble right now. I'm not saying anything that nobody else or you haven't all read out of the papers and all the stuff that's going on in the community. It's pretty sad. It's pretty pathetic, and it wounds my heart to think that kids are being have to put up with all of this stuff. But back to what I was saying, as I digress. That money does not come back to the school system. Now, Abby, is that a law, or is it just the NFA way?
Excuse me?
It's the NFA way.
I'm sorry, we can't.
Am I going past my time?
Yes, but you also cannot engage the audience while you're speaking.
I'm sorry, Abby, I won't do it again. Well, that's kind of, I apologize. And I didn't see my timer anyway. But anyway, that is money. We need to see what we can do to put pressure on NFA to retrieve that money. It's just not right. These kids are stuck, and then Norwich Public Schools has to pay another fee. If they're in adult ed, they have to have a teacher, they have to have a para, they have to have computer programs, whatever, adios. But think about how much money for each kid. Something new to think about other than we need more money. We all know we need more money. We need new strategies. We've got to think about doing different things. And if we have to parade around NFA and do whatever, I'm your girl. I'll go.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the council, please? Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Bowie.
Because they're all red.
I don't know why it's not up there. I know.
Good evening. Rodney Bowie, 62 Roosevelt Avenue, Norwich. Just a comment about the education. I found that kids that wanted to get an education in the city of Norwich could get any kind of education they wanted to, even college credits. And Abby's done a hell of a job, and I can't say any more about that. The only thing I was concerned about was an obscure item. Item 18. Amendment to change the allocation of MPU gross revenues. I had a chat with Ed Cedar about 40, 50 years ago, and I understand that the CCD actually owns public utilities. Actually owns public utilities. So just like that, I'm an owner of a utility again. I also own Con Edison too. I get a dividend from that. I'd like to think I've been getting a dividend from Norwich Public Utilities. At the time, Ed said that the town didn't want to get into buying the utility. So I'd like to keep as much money as he can in CCD. We already pay for enough stuff out here. So maybe Corporation Council could even clue me in, because I could be way off base, as to who actually owns Norwich Public Utilities. Like I say, according to Ed, we own it, CCD. But anyhow, my children and my grandchildren got an education here in the city of Norwich, and I'd like to thank Abby for that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Citizen comment still open. Any further? Yes, this gentleman.
Good evening, Darrell Wilson, 32nd Street. I stand, several items on our agenda affect the overall kid in this city. One that I specifically want to talk about, we know where I stand on education, and I think we need to provide our students with every opportunity they need this upcoming year, a new superintendent, new ideas, to give them the chance to grow. We can't talk about test scores, we can't talk about issues within our school system if we don't provide all the resources. But for me, more importantly, item 16, where we talk about an irrigation system for our Hamilton Avenue field. I've played there. I currently referee a lot of their games throughout the year. It's time that we invest in something for our young people. We can't sit up here every single year that they win a championship down there and give them a proclamation and award them, and then not help them for the betterment of their health, the betterment of the image of the field, the better of their reputation for the field. We can't do those things and award them if we're not going to help those pieces. I go to other fields within the conference for other schools and other towns that they play, and they take very good pride in their facilities. They need help. We can't continue to kick the can down the road. These kids need it. They deserve it. They're bringing home championships. They've played their hardest. An irrigation system is needed down there. It's been needed for well over 20 years. And we need to invest in that field. That field is not getting smaller. The number of individuals playing football is not getting smaller. It's growing. Those kids take pride in that facility. The parents, the coaches, all the volunteers. The least we can do as a city is, as we continue to develop and do capital improvements to other fields, Hamilton Ave needs that. It's more than cutting the grass and making it look good. It's time to invest in its improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think the timer is still working, is yet working. I didn't see any lights.
I don't
Green
either.
light was on.
Oh, I can't see.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, I just, must be the angle from where I'm sitting. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further speakers? Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Rick DiGiacomo, 8 Turnpike Park, Norwich, Connecticut. Also president of Norwich Youth Football League and the athletic director for St. Pat's. I'm here for number 16 as well. We have a very close relationship now with Parks and Rec. We're trying to put a lot of time and effort and money out of pocket to have that field improved. The irrigation system is absolutely necessary. I can't tell you how many times as a conference, within the conference, we've been cited for violations for field conditions during games. We've been cited several times just in this past year, and that's what the improvements we've tried to make on our own. This would benefit the children. We get a lot of kids down there, and there's a lot of good volunteers. So I would just implore you and thank you for considering Amendment 16. We could really use that for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers? Sir.
Good evening. My name's Dave Wallman. I own Atlantic Lawn Service, and I volunteered last fall to take care of the fertilizer seeding at Hamilton Field.
Could we have your address, please? Your personal address?
Okay, I live in Clinton.
Clinton.
My son-in-law and grandson and daughter live here in Norwich.
Okay.
I'm just want to state some facts about good field. So anyway, I'm volunteering. I have done doing the fertilizer, doing the seeding. And in order to have a good, healthy field with good, deep roots and grass, so kids don't twist an ankle, twist a knee, fall, hurt a shoulder, you need good, healthy turf. And I am volunteering to do that, and I've started fertilizer seed, but you need irrigation in order to get those roots nice and deep so the turf will stay as healthy as possible. Well, I do not live here in Norwich, but I just like to state the fact of a good, healthy field. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers? Under citizen comment? Anyone else like to join us under citizen comment? Again, under citizen comment, anyone like to join us who hasn't had a chance? Third, final time. Thank you all for your concerns and sharing them. Declare it closed.
New business resolutions relative to granting permission to Global City Norwich to host various community festivals downtown and temporary closing of Franklin Street.
Motion, please, to bring this forward. Alderwoman Gould, second. Pro Tem Nash. Is there discussion? Alderwoman Gould.
Had a lot of people contact me about resolution number 1, and I have been sort of a pain getting this clear so that the business owners on Franklin Street understand, and I want to make it clear to everybody here and the council. Keep talking about the closing of Franklin Street, but I want to assure the business owners that are on Franklin Street that on Saturday, May 18th, and that on Saturday, June 15th, we will not be closing Franklin Street to vehicular traffic. And I'm saying this out loud and in public, so if I find out that we're closing Franklin Street on Saturday, May 18th, or Saturday, June 15th, they're probably going to take me away in handcuffs somewhere. There's been a lot of rumors going around, a lot of misinformation, and I want to, and poor Suki, her phone has blown up this week. So it's, Franklin Street will not be closed on Saturday, May 18th, or Saturday, June 15th. Otherwise, I fully support the Global City Initiative and all of these festivals, but we have to be mindful of the business owners on Franklin Street. We cannot impact them during the summer months, especially on a Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further comment on the resolution? Alderman DeLucia?
So my first question is for the city manager. Mr. Solomon, who pays for the police resources to close the street and run these festivals?
That's the responsibility of the organization.
So if I understand that correctly, that means that out of the Global Cities budget and their total funds, they will pay a bill to the city of Norwich for those resources.
Only if we have to hire special duty officers. That's up to the police chief. I don't think he's here tonight, but the police chief has the sole discretion of determining what type of officers and how many are needed at the various events.
So if I understand that answer, what you're saying is that if the police chief decides that he's going to use on-duty police officers who are slated for patrol that day in order to accomplish this or support this event, then there is no bill.
That's a possibility.
He's still,
My
yes, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. My follow-up question to that, Mr. Salamone, is do other organizations that look to close streets get that same consideration?
I don't want to speak for the police chief, but I think the police chief tries to balance the need for public safety with the cost involved for each organization. So each event is taken on its own merit, and the police chief or his representatives will come up with a plan that is the most effective and cost-effective for each event.
Thank you. I still would like to hold the floor. Thank you, Mr. Salamone. So we just heard from Alderwoman Gould that she has got a lot of input from the brick and mortar taxpayers on Franklin Street about two events. But I'm wondering if anybody from the mayor's office has had ongoing conversations with the businesses on Franklin Street about seeking input about the number of events that we are having on that street.
Yes, I have. In fact, I visited a number of those businesses personally to gauge their concerns, and I share the same concern about Franklin being closed on a Saturday.
So, and I'm not trying to drop this in your lap, Mr. Mayor, but the question, I guess, or the idea, whatever you want to call it, that occurred to me was that, you know, further down in this resolution, we see where San Quindolce Plaza is being used for a couple of events, and I'm wondering why all of these events can't be held in the parking garage, right, directly across the street from us here, and in the San Quindolce Plaza. We'll still be drawing people downtown, right? We wouldn't be closing any streets, and we wouldn't be impacting the businesses that just happen to unfortunately be on one street in the downtown area. I just wonder if there's been any exploration of alternate sites, including the one that I just mentioned.
The answer is yes, there has been exploration. In fact, that's what led to a use of Angelo San Quindolce Plaza, but also the parking deck across the street from us is in fact in use on Sunday afternoons. There are more than one denomination of religion held at a Congregational church. In fact, they have services throughout Sunday afternoon, so that deck is not available. Otherwise, you're kicking all those people out from parking facility for attending their service.
But fair enough, and I don't mean to debate this with you on the floor, because this is probably a conversation that could happen outside of council chambers, but I would imagine that these events could happen on Saturdays, and therefore the Sunday conflict would go away. You don't have to respond to that. I'm just saying that there should be a dialogue about that, I believe, okay?
The dialogue has taken place, and it's reflected in this resolution. Hence, you see Saturday listed several times. But the point being that Franklin Street must be open on Saturday, because that is a much higher profile day for the businesses there. And we need to encourage and support and protect those restaurants that are downtown that have invested in our city. That's the bottom line. I mean, that's where I stand on the issue. I've shared that one-on-one with businesses. I've said it at an NCDC board meeting, and I'm saying it publicly here.
And please understand, Mr. Mayor, I'm not attacking you on this. I just think that we need to refine what we're doing here, because I completely support what Global Cities is doing. I completely support this multicultural celebration, or these multicultural celebrations that we're inviting into our downtown. I'm just saying that I believe we need to refine the way we execute this so that all of the stakeholders, or I should say none of the stakeholders, are taking on an unreasonable or disproportionate burden. That's all I'm saying. I'm not attacking you. My final question on this matter would be to follow Alderwoman Gould's point. Okay, we have before us a resolution that says under number 1, a street closure from noon until 7, and then again on the June 15th, a street closure from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Are we now going to amend this resolution to delete the street closure? I'll leave that as an open question and yield the floor.
Alderwoman Gould?
We're not closing Franklin Street on those days. We'll be closing Bath Street.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
You may want to amend the resolution to make it clear then, because as it reads right now, I think there could be some confusion. So if you were to amend it to say with street closure of Bath Street in item number 1 and item number 3, if that's what's intended, then that might clarify it.
What is the council's pleasure? Yes, Alderwoman Philbrick?
Well, I had comments about other things, but I guess in order to proceed, I don't know which way you want to do it. I think it needs clarification, because it does say exactly that. With street closure, define what you mean by street closure, which I can use as a segue into my other comment, which is, this to me is another example of a great idea with no preparation. There are no policies, there are no procedures. Let's just have a bunch of festivals, and we'll schedule them, and then we'll figure out how we're going to deal with the logistics of it. It's my personal opinion and my professional opinion as a duly elected member of this council that the citizens of Norwich expect more from us, that we can't just be doing this, that, and the other thing. And I thought the Global City money was part of a line item in somebody's budget.
There's a $25,000 line item in the current year as a portion of a match to the $100,000 contributed by Chelsea Groton Bank. That is correct.
Okay. So to go to Alderman DeLucia's comment, when he asked about payment, the possibility exists that if the chief of police decides, just decides, because there is no policy, that for the Peruvian festival, I think that I need, special detail officers at $25 an hour, that will come out of the line item of the $25,000 allocation.
It's my understanding, if you're asking a question, that the chief and the duty officer in charge of community policing have worked out on arrangements that those officers who are on duty at that time are rotated and pass through the vicinity of the event, that there has not been an increased charge at all. They've been utilizing those officers in that manner to reduce costs.
Okay, and then if I may, as a follow-up, so again, I go back to the policy and procedure that are not in place. So if Officer Smith is patrolling this area and Officer Jones is assisting him, that leaves that section of town and that section of town unprotected. So as I say, I support the concept, but I really believe that going forward, or before we schedule, well, but this takes us into the fall, that we put a little more time and effort into developing a policy and procedure when it comes to these sort of festivals. So I'll let somebody else make the amendment for Bath Street. I'm tired of it.
For clarity's sake, I entertain a motion to amend the two cited to add Bath Street for clarity purposes. Is there a motion being offered to move this forward? Pro Tem Nash, second Alderman Browning. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous, 7-0. Understand? Mike, you got that?
2 minutes.
Okay. Okay, the resolution as amended, is there further discussion? Pro Tem Nash.
Yeah, I just want to quickly, I haven't participated in the planning of these particular events coming up, but I did take part in a couple of the original first ones. And as far as the police protection goes, what the officers have done was, as the mayor alluded to, is the community police officers have flexed their hours so that they can cover the events. So there's no overtime cost, replacement costs for those officers to mill around the community. And the other officers that are on that beat patrol area do swing down to ensure that the safety of the citizens that are on the street are fine. They're not taken from the east side and sitting down down on Franklin Street. The center cruisers and the community police officers, the biking guys, those guys that are available, swing down, check on the crowd, make sure everything looks okay. You know, as a former police officer, you can read a crowd pretty quickly when you get down there to see what kind of activity is going on and where some of the behavior is. So I think what the chief is doing right now is adequate for these events. I believe as these events grow in the next few years, I think there may be need for police to be down there and assigned down there for that particular the events. But at this point, though the festivals are growing, as of right now, the way the chief has it, it seems to be an adequate enough coverage. But it has not cost us anything at the time that I'm aware of. These events, I don't know for sure, but I know the first few were covered by community officers flexing their hours. Thank you.
Further discussion on the resolution as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous, vote is 7-0.
Resolution number 2, relative to appointments as regular members to the Commission of Persons with Disabilities.
Motion to bring this forward, please. Alderwoman Gould, is there a second? Alderman Browning, is there discussion? Yes, Alderwoman Gould.
I'd like to thank Julie Menders and Barbara Steiger for their willingness to serve on the Commission for Persons with Disabilities. I think they'll add a lot of value to that committee.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous, vote is 7-0.
Resolution number 3, relative to an appointment as a regular member to the Dangerous Buildings Board of Review.
Motion, please. Alderwoman Gould, second Pro Tem Nash. Is there discussion? Alderwoman Gould.
Serving on Dangerous Buildings Board of Review, I'm thrilled that Mr. Braddock has agreed to accept another term with us. We do a lot of important work there, and he's always got thoughtful discussion. He's always interested in what's best for the city, and I appreciate all of his hard work.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. The vote is 7-0.
Resolution number 4, relative to reappointment as a regular member to the Commission on the City Plan.
Motion, please. Pro Tem Nash, second Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Alderwoman Gould.
Art Sharon has sat on the commission on the city plan for a very long time. And I appreciate his willingness to serve again our fair city.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous, vote is 7-0.
Resolution number 5, relative to a reappointment as a regular member to Inland Wetlands Watercourses and Conservation Commission.
Pro Tem Nash, second. Alderwoman Gould, is there discussion? For the public's benefit, the gentleman being appointed, or reappointed, excuse me, is again Art Sharon. In his responsibilities with the Commission on City Plan, he also has a dual role with inland wetlands. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Motion is passes 7-0.
Resolution 6, relative to the sale of beer and wine at the Rose Arts Festival on Chelsea Parade.
Motion, please. Pro Tem Nash, second. Alderwoman Gould, is there discussion? Pro Tem Nash.
I encourage all my fellow councilmen to support this. Last year, the Rose Arts was a highly successful event. It's well-organized and well-attended, and this is just another addition onto the city's growing list of festivals and activities that make a life better to live in Norwich. So please save your date for Saturday, June 29th, and get down to this event and support these people so that we can continue to have this event. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes, Alderman DeLucia.
So I have one question for the city manager. There's this event now being authorized for beer and wine require police coverage?
I don't know specifically what the arrangements are there, as far as whether they pay for coverage or not, or...
No, well, the first question is whether it would require, who will make that decision? Will it be you that makes that decision? Will it be the police chief?
No, the chief.
And then it will be, as we discussed earlier, it would be up to the chief how he allocates the officers to cover that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Alderman Browning.
I do not know if this is permitted by the rules, but I had Brian Kobolars, who we all know, ask a very detailed legal question. I want to know if I could at least call him up and have him ask it through our city manager to the Corporation Council.
I'm assuming he's part of the Rose Arts Committee structure?
Are you?
No,
he's
not. I would say no.
We have public safety on Wednesday. He's more than welcome to come and address any issues.
Certainly.
We could take it up there.
I will try. I think I will try to ask the question he asked me, but I will not do it total justice. The question is, using public land, allowing a nonprofit to organize a beer festival, does that impinge our ability to further say to future for-profit enterprises that they can or they cannot conduct such activity in the city of Norwich? And that would go to...
That's not me.
They have an alcohol license.
Oh, I'm sorry. That would be up to the council to decide. If they want to restrict public lands in a particular way, they probably can, as long as they're not violating the rules that generally apply. I mean, the idea of public lands, even though they're in Norwich, is they're available to all of the residents of all of the state entirely. But in terms of any type of business that's conducted there, would be within the purview of the council to decide how you want to address that. You can do it as a policy, you can do it on a by-case basis.
Thank you.
I hope that helps. Just for edification, this resolution was passed by this council last year. This is not the first time they've asked for this, and it was actually offered in a very limited manner, having attended. Is there further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous vote is 7-0.
Resolution number 7, relative to holding a Memorial Day Parade on Monday, May 27th, 2019.
Motion, please. Pro Tem Nash, second. Alderwoman Gould, is there discussion? Yes, Alderwoman Philbrick.
Can you tell me what organizations have been contacted to participate in this parade?
I'll try my best. This is a event sponsored by Post 594, Richard E. Horrigan Post up in our industrial park. They work through the Norwich Area Veterans Council, and they reach out to all veterans posts. And they make a sincere effort to make this a public event. They get it out to the media. I've heard John call in local guy Stu Breyer, and they put it on the radio to let the public be aware that it's taking place. But it is chiefly sponsored by the Veterans Council and Post 594.
So there will be road closures?
As in the past, there is a short planned parade from the cathedral down to Chelsea Parade. So there will be traffic management required while people are walking on the street. Yes, there will be a temporary lack of use available for basically Broadway. The further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous, vote is 7-0.
Resolution number 8, relative to the sale of property at 70 Laurel Hill Avenue.
Motion, please, bring it forward. Alderwoman Gould, second Pro Tem Nash. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous, vote is 7-0.
Resolution 9, relative to the sale of property at 29 Boswell Avenue.
Motion, please. Pro Tem Nash, second Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous, vote is 7-0.
Resolution 10, relative to holding a memorial concert at Howard T. Brown Park.
Motion, please. Pro Tem Nash, second Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Yes, Alderwoman Gould.
I will be supporting this resolution. Mr. Martin is a former alderman, close friend, and I think this is a lovely way to honor the memory of his mother, Jean.
Thank you. Is there further discussion or questions? Alderwoman Philbrick.
I will echo Alderwoman Gould's comments. Where is Jerry? Jerry, you're a good son. Your parents, I'm sure, are very proud of you, and I think this is a wonderful way for you to pay tribute to them. You're actually inviting the whole community to share in the love and memory of your parents. So you're a good man and a good son. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous, vote 7-0.
Resolution 11, relative to an amendment of the 2019-20 budget for expenditure adjustments recommended by the city manager.
Motion, please, to bring resolution forward. Pro Tem Nash, second Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous, 7-0.
Resolution 12, relative to an amendment of the 2019-20 budget to increase education funding.
Motion, please, to bring this forward. Resolution 12, Alderman DeLucia, second Pro Tem Nash. Is there discussion? Alderman DeLucia.
I just have a few statements on this. Thank you for those who made public comment on both sides of the issue. However, I believe that a community reveals its soul through what it provides funding for. I also believe that the practice of underfunding the Board of Education and then making up the difference with fund balance at the end of the fiscal year is a dishonest practice, and it hides the true cost of education, really for the sole purpose of appearing to cut spending and cut taxes. This council placed education among its top 3 priorities in its original or initial strategic planning meeting, and now it's the time to put actions behind those words. I believe that young families are not buying homes here because of the city's reputation for grossly underfunding education. The 2018-19 appropriation, the current fiscal year, was $78.5 million. The actual expenditure is going to be close to $81 million. Using that $81 million as a basis point and adding the average rate of inflation, the appropriation should be $83 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderman Browning?
We seem to be faced with a choice where we're either going with 80 million or 83 million. One is a budget increase of about 2%, the other is 6.5%. I'm not comfortable with either number, but if I have to choose between the two of them, which is what the choice is this evening, I will go with the higher number. I would have gone with 1 mil with an increase of 1.6 million myself, but I think this is a very tough choice. I think we are looking at a tax increase. If this passes, if we don't pass it, we're going to do a lot of damage to our school system. It is not a good choice. It's not a good balance in either case, but I will be voting for it.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Yes, Alderman Burnham.
So during the budget hearings, the performance of our schools came into question. And I don't understand how you can criticize the citizens and educators on one hand and then be outraged when they ask for the resources to improve their standing. Our teachers are on high deductible health plans in order to cut costs, which recent studies have come out that they don't actually cut costs. They end up increasing expenses because the high deductibles actually prevent people from accessing care, which increases your health costs later on. The administrators called contractors begging for reductions. They reorganized staff to shift costs away from the city wherever they could. We heard testimony at public hearing from a parent that as of March, her daughter was no longer able to have art classes. And we heard how somebody from the Board of Ed had to go buy school supplies out of their own pocket. We also have heard how schools have to share toilet paper. Toilet paper. So what else should they do? To me, it is an outrage and a failure that this body continues to underfund the schools and then blame the victim for that underfunding. I acknowledge that we have unique issues that were so eloquently outlined by one of our citizens, highlighting the contracting relationship with NFA. We have a population with high needs, and these are systemic items that require a long-term strategy for solution. To me, that solution is not to cut them off at the knees with a dishonest budget, given that we will inevitably be paying for the remainder at the closeout of the fiscal year, just as we have been doing in years past. We must be honest with our costs up front and fully fund our schools, instead of the deceptive practice of continuing to rely on the undesignated fund balance to satisfy a cut now and fund later strategy. I really think it's a responsibility and a moral obligation to fully fund our schools, not only for our kids and our teachers and our educators and our citizens, but in a transparent budgeting manner so that we know our costs up front and so that we can plan for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderwoman Filbert?
I can remember sitting in this council chamber, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, and listening to the core group of people who show up every year at budget time. No disrespect, but it's the only time of the year we see you. And I'm referring to the Board of Education. You come here, you plead your cause, you make us feel guilty because we're robbing the children of an education. They don't have pencils, they don't have pens, they don't have toilet paper. My daughter works at NFA. NFA is not the ugly stepchild. If you think that you can do a better job by having your own high school, I'd like to see your proposal. I'd like to see if it would be 1/3 of your $83 million budget. At some point in time, I'm not against children. I was a child once myself. I had children. I have a grandchild. I understand what school used to be. You went to school for an education. Now you go to school for subsidized, taxpayer-funded daycare. From the cradle to the grave, from dawn to dusk. We pay for all of it. I understand that there are special needs. I understand there are mandates. But I want you to also understand that as important as the children are, so are the senior citizens of this city. I'm 76 years old. I had my birthday last week. All my life, I have done what I was supposed to do. I bought what I could afford. I paid my taxes. I did the right thing. So just as a child is entitled to a quality of life education, I feel that a senior citizen is entitled to a quality of life, end of life. And we can no longer afford this. So to go back to my original statement, I was sitting in council chambers and I made the comment, I stood at the podium and I said, how much would be enough? $1 million? And everybody clapped, and I sat down, and this woman behind me patted me on the shoulder and said, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I turned to her and I said, I think you missed the point of what I was saying. I was being facetious because I don't know where it's going to end. You have a budget this year, you had X amount of dollars to spend, and you spent more than you were allocated. It's called accountability. We all have to learn to do with less. And as I say, the Board of Education, like so many other departments in the city at budget time, pack the room and plead their cause. Don't get your wants and your needs mixed up. I know that you have responsibilities, but how much can we absorb? How much more can you? The pie is only so big. If you have an 8-inch pizza pie, you can cut it into 22 pieces, or you can cut it into 2 pieces. But the bottom line is, it's still an 8-inch pizza pie. So somebody's going to get a big, big chunk and go home with their belly full, and somebody else is going to go home with their being very hungry. I will not support this. I cannot in good conscience, and because I believe that we all have to learn to live within our budget. So I know it's not going to win me any friends or influence people, but that's the way it is. And I also understand we have a new superintendent, but we haven't met her yet. So I'll let you all make your own comments to yourselves or your friends later.
Thank you very much. Is there further discussion? Alderman DeLucia.
And I realize that this is my second time talking on this issue. I'll keep my comments brief. I understand the frustration of the fact that an increase of, might as well call it $3 million over what was proposed in the city manager's budget is going to cause a tax increase. And for me, like many people in this room, like many people in our community, my kids are grown and out of school. Well, I have a daughter in college, but I'm not putting kids through the school system. However, as an educator myself, it's a little offensive to hear that school is glorified babysitting. It is not. What our professionals do in the classroom and what our administrators do in the buildings is heroic. I don't know what else we can ask the Board of Ed to do. I don't know what we can ask them to do. The teachers are on one of the worst versions of health insurance that is available today in the marketplace. We hear that they're sharing supplies all the way down to the toilet paper from building to building. That members of the community are running out and spending hundreds of dollars to supply just one school with enough pencils and markers to get by. At some point, we have to decide what is the priority here in the city of Norwich.
Education must be a priority. We, as a council, sat down and agreed to that very point. You cannot say something is a priority and underfund it by $4.5 million. You cannot say that something is a priority, something like education is a priority, and say that it is nothing more than taxpayer-subsidized, glorified daycare. You cannot attack test scores when you ask teachers to teach with absolutely no materials, unless they buy them themselves. And we are certainly not the highest paying district, so I don't see where the teachers have the money to support their classes, even though they still do. Bottom line is this: what is Norwich going to be? Where is Norwich going to invest in its future? I say one of those places is in public education. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Pro Tem Nash.
I really wasn't going to speak on this particular item because I know this is not the last bite at this apple. This is a preliminary, so things can still change before before the budget's actually approved. But I just want to say this because I know people come up and they talk about it and they tell us to support this, and I get it. And I feel like a horrible human being sitting up here saying to myself, I can't support this right now because it's too much. And the city of Norwich has been going in the right direction with its mill rate and its taxes, and that's going to attract more people and cause the grand list to grow, which provides us more funding. And if anyone knows my history, I was the DARE officer here in Norwich for 12 years. I taught in many schools. I can't tell you how many times I see people that say, you were my DARE officer. I work at the Coast Guard Academy now, and there's at least a half a dozen to a dozen people that are in there, working there, that were my DARE students. So when I sit here and I have to look at this budget, I have to take into consideration not just the people that are here tonight, but the phone calls I get, the conversations I have, some of the emails I receive, and they implore me to stay the course, stay focused, hold the line. I get this is tough. Both my kids went through the Norwich public school systems, got fine educations, went on to college and got fine educations, and I credit it all from the Norwich public schools and Norwich Free Academy. I have to, we sit there and say, yeah, we put this in our top three. My top three has always been public safety, education, and infrastructure. Those have always been my three priorities since I've sat up here. I've done the best I can. We have never cut the Norwich Public Schools. We have not given them what they've asked for. That's called negotiations. I understand it leaves a deficit. We work around this deficit. If I remember correctly, this deficit that we were supposed to have this year was supposed to be over $5 million, and it wasn't. And I give kudos to the schools for keeping it down. And I understand that we're asking you to do it again and again and again. But when I sat here 12 years ago, my term, another councilman said if we had continued to give the Norwich Public Schools the increases they had asked for, we would literally be at almost a $96 million budget. How are we supposed to run a city if the mill rate's 52 mills or 49 mills or even higher? It can't be done. And I said, as far as public safety and school and infrastructure, yeah, school's important, but so's the police department, and we cut them. So's the fire department, and we cut them. I sat here and said it many times. The schools are a gem in the crown of Norwich. So is our police, so is our fires and volunteers, so is our citizens. They're the big jewel. And if we keep adding taxes, and the state's not helping us, we're getting the highest tax increase in the history of Connecticut coming up, and we're supposed to continue doing this, there's a limit. And as Alderwoman Philbrick said, the pie is only so big, folks. And if we start just willy-nillying a mill here and a mill there and a half a mill there and 2/3 of a mill there or 1/3 of a mill there, next thing you know, we're at 50 mills. And it doesn't take long to get there. And we just had a presentation early tonight about a woman trying to, an organization, a company promoting Norwich. What are we giving her? A tax increase, a mill increase? Go out and sell the city with that. We're already one of the highest. We've gone in the right direction the last few years. I beg to continue going in that direction. I know it hurts. I know we have to do way more with less. I get it. I was a Hartford Public Schools security officer. Believe me, I know what it's like not to have funding. I know what it's like to have 25, 26, 28 kids in a class. All right? So at this point, this is not the last of this. I mean, there still could be some increases, but right now, tonight, no, I can't go with this. I'm sorry. That's all.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Yes, Alderman Burnham.
Thank you. Alderman Nash is correct. We did end up, well, the people who voted for it cut fire, cut police, and we did not fully fund the schools. And we are making up for that shortfall from our undesignated fund balance, which we will be doing again this year. Also, this request did not fully fulfill the request by the Norwich Public Schools. This is $300,000 under. I really think that we have to face the facts of we're going to get another bill of probably close to $3 million from our undesignated fund balance. And I don't know the impact of that. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But this is a choice between fund it now in an honest way and fund it later in a backhanded way. That's just my perspective. And I hope that, you know, obviously this isn't going to pass tonight. It's very clear. But I do hope that there is another bite at the apple. And if you do have a proposal of what you're willing to go with, you know, you could put forward an amendment or we'll see something later. I think, you know, any step forward is positive. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? I'll join in. Last year, the Board of Ed received a 3% increase, which is over and above the average increase across this state for a city our size. That average is 1 3/4. Again, they got 3%. They did want 9%. Alderman Burnham is correct. Passing this amendment, looking at a deficit operating budget right now, is adding probably another $5.5 million or more to the taxpayers' plight. And I have to ask the Board of Ed and the members that are here, when you're given a budget, every other city department lives with the revenues they've been provided, but for some reason, this board now feels they don't have to. And we who are dealt with the responsibility of passing a budget for the entire city have to ask how you can do that. No other city department overspends their budget with intent. That's what you're doing. That never happened in the first term when I was mayor, those other 4 years. And the revenues were set. This same superintendent and the Board of Education and many of the same members are there, adjusted their expenditures. That process seems to have been lost on you. While this is not the final vote on the budget, I'm asking you to search your soul and ask yourself, is that the way you're supposed to govern? I'm going to say to you, it is not. If every city department deliberately overspent their budget every single year, where would we be? Where would the taxpayers be? They wouldn't be living in this city, I'll tell you that. I will not be supporting this. We do not take comment from the floor, sir. That was not a question for a response. I'll be happy to discuss it with you after. Is there further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion fails 4-3. Next one, please.
Resolution 13, relative to an amendment of the 2019-20 budget to increase funding for Otis Library.
Motion, please, to bring it forward. Alderman DeLucia, second Pro Tem Nash. Is there discussion? Alderman DeLucia.
So here we are again. Where are our priorities going to be, right? We all know that the Otis is a multicultural hub for the entire city. We heard that time and time again during budget hearings. I believe, and it has been said by people other than me, smarter than me, that the Otis is also a critical component of our education system, which we fail to appropriately fund, in my estimation. So by continuing to reap this benefit from the Otis Library, knowing that we are eroding their endowment assures that this valuable resource will soon be unsustainable. The Otis Library deserves to be funded in a way that is fair and balanced. I believe that funding them in a way where they do have to spend some of the revenue from their endowment in order to meet their expenses, but not erode the principal, is fair. And that's what this resolution and this amendment to the budget seeks to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further comment? Yes, Alderman Gould.
Otis Library is a gem in the city of Norwich. But there's no reason for them to have to erode their endowment. They have $4.5 million in their endowment. And the proposed 1920 budget that they gave us, they put in the column that it was $990,000, but actually the city manager proposed $995,000. They didn't include on their sheet for income any of the grant income that they receive, which I was told was between $15,000 and $20,000. And they didn't include on their report the investment income that they receive, which is about $150,000, I was told. So at $170,000, if you go to the back where it says that they were going to have to take $94,000 out of their account, I just found them $170. So I think at $995,000, the library will be in perfectly great shape.
Is there further discussion? Alderman Burnham?
We heard a presentation from the library about those certain restricted funds, and it's similar to every other department where we really parse through their city budget, not other funds. The executive director of the library is here. Would you mind coming up and just walking through those different funding streams and how they're restricted? Because this is be the second time we're hearing this.
What's that? I need a motion. Huh?
If the council wants to have it.
Yeah. Just a moment, please. Next time, please ask that through the whole council. To give leave for that.
Okay. Sorry, let me
It's just
rephrase.
a better way of doing it.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Would it be all right if we have the executive director from the library come up and explain those funding streams? Thank you.
Yes, and what was the question again, please?
So the different funding streams, so your investment, your endowment, grants, and how we heard from in your budget hearing how those can't supplant the line items that are outlined in the city budget.
Yeah.
If you could enumerate a little bit on that.
Yeah, there are restricted funds which are restricted to specific items, which I did explain. Those can not be used for general operations. They can only be used for example, some of the programs that I outlined, the ACES program with Norwich Free Academy, the outreach programs that we do to provide support for computer classes, but they can't be used for general operations. They do not get put into general operations. They are simply expended for that particular project until they are exhausted. We don't draw on them for day-to-day operations. Whatever we propose in the way of general operations comes from, yes, from our endowment income. It would come from any earned revenues we're able to generate, and the bulk of it continues to be contingent on the city's funding. Is there something else I can? Yes.
Well, she still has the floor.
I'm good, thanks.
Anything else?
Other question? Yes, Alderman Delucia.
How many years have you had to dip into the principal of your endowment in order to meet your
I
expenses?
think this will be the second or third year.
So for at least 2, maybe 3 years, you have not received this $170,000?
Well, we haven't received, no, I mean, we only received, the money that you were relating to a few years ago. And when that money was received, it was specifically used to revive our endowment, which had been depleted in order to build the new library, which was part of the requirements for getting the state money to build the library. We used the money from the donor to get the amount that was generated back to the point where it was when the building was 20,000 square feet. We are now in a 40,000 square foot building, which I might point out was what the city wanted. And I've been making this argument every year since I've been director. So I'm not asking for an extraordinary amount of money. I'm certainly not asking you to support the entire budget of the Otis Library, but what we make from the endowment is contingent on the return from the endowment. And every year we are, and as I explained during the budget hearing, and I explained on other occasions when we met with the city council, we are expending all of the income from that endowment currently. So the corpus is never going to get any bigger, which I don't think was the intent of the donors. Half of it's restricted. If we were to go into the principal, we would lose that portion of the endowment because we would be violating the stipulations of the original gift. So, I think it's wonderful that we have an endowment, but it certainly doesn't make us financially independent of the city. And I am also, and I will say I appreciate the efforts to improve what we are getting. I would also thank Mr. Salmon for putting us in for a modest increase this year. And that certainly is something that we appreciate and respect. And we respect all of your support, and thank you very much. Anything else?
Is there other questions while he's here?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion does not pass. The vote is 4-3.
Resolution 14, relative to an amendment of the 2019-20 budget to increase funding for seasonal temporary employees in the Recreation Division.
Motion, please. Pro Tem Nash, is there a second? Alderwoman Gould, is there a discussion? Alderwoman Burnham?
Just want to make sure. Yeah. So we heard through the budget hearing process that the Recreation Department is seriously understaffed. They manage a disproportionate amount of programming and facility compared to the staff that they have. They actually need a lot more than what is recommended here, but I understand the hesitancy of this body at this time to add full-time benefited employees, and I just feel that the least we could do is provide them some relief with this modicum of support with temporary staffing for the season.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous, vote is 7-0.
Resolution 15, relative to an amendment of the 2019-20 budget to add funding for golf course equipment and decrease funding for demolition in the capital budget.
Motion, please, to bring it forward. Pro Tem Nash, second. Alderwoman Gould, is there discussion? Alderman DeLucia?
Well, the first comment I have is that the money to fund this is actually being deducted from another line item in the capital budget, the demolition fund. So this is a dollar-for-dollar swap within the budget, so we're not adding any new expense. Additionally, the golf course is one quality of life amenity in this city that's self-sustaining. Every decade or so, the city is asked to provide for some equipment. I do not see this as an unreasonable request. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderman Browning?
I believe we've already provided $800,000 in bonding, correct me if I'm wrong, to help them with their water situation. I do not see the level of need. They also are unusual among our institutions in the sense that they can raise money by charging additional fees. I will not be voting in favor of this.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-1.
Resolution 16, relative to an amendment for the 2019-20 budget to add funding for Hamilton Avenue field irrigation and sprinkler improvements and decrease funding for demolition in the capital budget.
Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderman Gould, second. Alderman DeLucia, is there discussion? Alderman Burnham?
Yeah, I propose this just because having been down to Hamilton Field and seeing what the kids have to go through when they practice, and the adults that are there, you basically need a respirator mask, and I think $45,000 to address the again, we're not adding, we're balancing from another line item to address the irrigation. I think is a fair price and long overdue. I understand that there's some history there, and that I was made abreast of this evening, that those who practice there need to be off the field for a certain amount of time, and in order to negotiate that there's some issues there. And is it all right if I ask Leanne to come up to see if she can shine any light? Like, you don't know? Okay, never mind. So I would really, urge to support this if the city could get behind negotiating the parameters for getting this done. And hopefully, if we pass it tonight, we can reach out to the head of the rec department to enumerate those issues. But yeah.
Thank you. Is there discussion? Alderman Nash?
I have a little bit of the history I can help share with, which we discussed just before council tonight. The issue with the Hamilton Avenue, I've been up here, I coached down there for years. My son played football down there for years. I don't know if anyone knows, I coach a semi-pro team and I coach at a local high school. So sports is very important to me, especially football. Football is definitely, I tell people, I shamefully admit I know more about football than I did about policing, and I was a cop for a profession. But anyway, the problem we have with the Hamilton Avenue is this. They need to be off that field for 2 to 3 years, maybe longer, for the root system to dig in. So putting an irrigation system in now isn't going to matter if they're running around there tearing it all up in July. Every year that I've been here, and I've been close with the rec on this project, they seed it, they maintain it, they get it looking kind of nice, and then July and August it gets torn all up and it's a big dirt field. There's nothing that an irrigation system is going to do unless you stay off the field for a couple of years. So my feeling is this, it's the old saying, throwing good money after bad. Until we can decide how we can substitute a field for them, and my suggestion, and I'll put any of the weight I can behind it as a councilman, to get them to play maybe at Norwich Free Academy for a few years. Their schedule will not interfere with Norwich Free Academy's football schedule or the other events. They have played some games there in the past. They need to be off that field for at least 2 to 3 years. I don't care how good the groundsman will be or the company coming in unless they're putting artificial turf down, it's not going to matter. You can irrigate that field all you want. If it's all torn up in July, what good is it? The field needs to take hold. And football is a huge thing in my life, and again, I coached at the youth league, and I'm very close with. I didn't know this gentleman tonight. I'm going to reach out to him and see if I can't work something with him and try to advocate for him. But at this point, throwing $45,000 at this until we can decide to get the kids someplace else to play for a little while, until the field gets a chance to take hold, I just think we're just throwing money right now that we can't afford. I'm not saying that in the future we don't do this, because I think if we can get the kids off the field for a couple of years, get them over at Norwich Free Academy, get the field to take, we can get an irrigation system in there to help maintain it and keep it prolonged. I'd like to see them practice somewhere else. In the past, when I was there, we practiced in the field next to it. I did go down there. That field is not adequate anymore to practice it. It needs rolling and flattened, and it's got giant ruts and stuff all in there. So the kids really can't practice there without injuring themselves. So they have no place to practice but on the field. I know up in some other towns, they don't practice at their fields. They practice at other school fields. The teams will go up there and practice individually, like I know up in Killingly, a team will practice up at the airport field, and another team practices over at the Owen Bell Park, so they're not tearing up the field down at the school. So that's something else we can look into, and again, now that this gentleman knows, but I have worked with the league in the past, and it's very difficult when it's just a matter of nature. You're just not going to get a root system in from April to July. It's just not happening. So at this time, I'm not going to be able to support this, but that was a little bit of the history I wanted to pass along. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Browning.
Just a question to Alderman Nash. I've been past the old ballpark at the dual field, which is right below Hammond Avenue, and I've never seen anyone practice at it. Is that some place where they could use the former outfield?
I mean, when I was down there, we did practice up there a few times back in, I'm talking like, I'm dating myself, but back in the 88, 89, we did practice over at the field in the housing project there. We practiced up there to get off the field because we couldn't use the side field. So that is options. We just got to work. I think we just got to work. And I didn't know this gentleman tonight. I wish he had stayed so I could have reached out to him, but I'll try to get in touch with the rec director and see if I can't get his number.
Thank you. Is there further questions? With the leave of the council, I'd actually like to ask a question of Leanne, if I may. Do we have irrigation systems on the fields that are maintained through the rec department?
Yes, on Dickaman, not Dickaman, Fontaine Field.
Fontaine.
Yep. I think that's the only one that we
The
have.
only one?
Yeah, and we're fixing that as we speak.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Is there further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Fails 4-3.
Resolution 17, relative to an amendment of the 2019-20 budget to add funding for the local match on Harbor Docks grant and decrease funding for demolition in the capital budget.
Motion, please, to bring this forward. Nash and DeLucia, is there discussion? Alderman DeLucia?
Mr. Mayor, at this time, I'd like to propose an amendment to resolution number 17 to change the funding local match amount to $120,000, and then to change the reduction in the demolition to offset the local match to minus $120,000.
Is there a second? Pro Tem Nash. Discussion on the amendment? Alderman DeLucia?
Just for explanation purposes, I'm on the Harbor Management Commission. These are the docks that are directly adjacent on the water at Howard T. Brown Park. They are in need of nearly $600,000 in repairs. So using that $600,000 number,
We are in an 80-20 split with the Port Authority in terms of the grant. The grant has not been applied for or awarded yet. We are setting aside this money for the intention of being able to hold up the city's end if we successfully obtain the grant. Short of that, with the leave of the council, I'd like to call the chair of the Harbor Management Commission, Tucker Braddock, to the podium.
Yes, sir.
Hi again.
Hi.
So you know, I've laid out the numbers and the big picture. Are there any details that the rest of the council should be aware of regarding the change in the amount?
Repeat that one more time, please.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying that I laid out the big picture and the change in the dollar amount, but there are any details that the council, that you feel the council should be aware of as the chair of the Harbor Management Commission?
Yeah, I think that I'm hoping that you can all support it. And again, thank you very much for the people who sponsored it. The safety of the docks are in question now. We had our Public Works department look at them, and they came up with a number saying that we should have them replaced. There is an opportunity through the Port Authority, which is a newly established authority for the Thames River, and we have availed ourselves of some of that money in the past year, $15,000, which was a sharing grant, $7,500 from them and $7,500 from our city to rewrite our Harbor Commission program. This is another opportunity, and I think it's a great opportunity to work with the Port Authority. There is a lot going on the Thames River further south in New London, and I think that this shows that we can reach out to them and do what we should be doing with our harbor. One thing that the safety of the docks is in question. The opportunity for the ADA compliancy so that people can use the docks is not there. And with the new docks, it will be there. There'll be an 80-foot ramp going down to the docks so that people who have never fished at Howard Brown Park can now fish there. Answer your question?
That's pretty much
I think it's
the cause and effect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's an 80-20 split, and it's not a guarantee to us. We may get it. We have to apply like every other town along the Connecticut coast. We're hoping, because we have done some good work with our river, that we will get this money and put in some new docks in, which I feel are very important to. It's a growth of our harbor that we're looking at, and this is showing that we can grow our harbor and make it a better place for people coming into the city and people who live in the city to enjoy the Howard Brown Park and the docks.
I have one follow-up question. Do you believe, or do you have information that would lead us to believe that we are in better standing or better position to be awarded this grant if we allocate the city's end of it on the front end tonight?
If we do not commit ourselves to the front end of this tonight, we will not be getting this money. I've met with the people in the Port Authority, and the application was issued on the 19th, and it has to be fully written by June 1st and submitted to the Port Authority. And we have to know that that money would be available to apply for the other 80%. Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome.
Braddock.
With the further questions, the chair. Thank you, Tucker.
Thank you all.
Is there further comment on the resolution?
Actually, on the amendment?
The amendment, yes, thank you. Further comment on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous on the resolution as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries 7-0 as amended.
Resolution 18, relative to an amendment of the 2019-20 budget to change the allocation of the NPU 10% gross revenues between the general fund and the city consolidated district.
Motion, please bring it forward. Alderman DeLucia, second. Pro Tem Nash, is there discussion? Alderman DeLucia?
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules in order to make a brief presentation to the council regarding this resolution.
Is there a second? Alderman Burnham? Perhaps explain a little bit more of the motion before we vote.
Absolutely. I put together a very brief slideshow that just has some graphical data to demonstrate the points that I would otherwise make verbally. I believe it would shorten at least my portion of the debate on this resolution.
Thank you. Is there further comment on the motion? Alderman Gould?
I just wonder why we weren't provided with this earlier.
I was only asked for this opportunity just before the meeting started, about 5 minutes. But everyone on the council has the right to make a motion such as this. Yes, Alderman Burnham.
Just like every other comment that we make tonight is not provided in advance, and I think this, just supports the comment of the existing resolution that was already put forward. Unless we start putting all of our comments in writing beforehand, I don't see the difference.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? I would only add that this is unusual. This has not been done in this manner in the past. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It's up to the council. But was there a hand? Alderman Philbrick.
I guess I'm a little confused because I'm getting older, so my memory doesn't serve me as well anymore. But it seems to me that we have deviated on numerous occasions this evening from standard procedure. And I just wonder, is this how we're going to be operating going forward?
No, it's not.
Then why would we start now?
The alderman has asked for a motion to be considered in this manner, and it's before us to decide. Is there further discussion? All those in favor of the motion for suspension of our rules for a brief presentation? Opposed? Motion carries 5-2.
Give Michelle. Yeah, I understand that. Absolutely.
Can you hear me? All right, thank you. So this is I will make this extremely brief. I just think that the graphical information was more valuable than just making bullet points from the dais. So this is regarding Resolution 18. So historically, very quickly, the blue bars represent the NPU's payment to the city of Norwich since the 2015-16 budget, or I should say fiscal year. And you can see that the payment has been trending upward. That's the top black line. The amount allocated to the general fund has been trending upward. Those are red columns, and the middle black line, while the part that is being allocated to the CCD has been trending downward since 2015. And when I looked at this merely from the standpoint of how the split has worked. In 2015 and 16, there was a 63 to 37% split, general fund to CCD. Since then, it has been in the lower 70 range to the general fund and in the upper 20 range to the CCD. This year's proposed budget has that split at 73% to the general fund and 27% to the CCD. And you can see that they are trending in completely different slopes. So the question is, how did we arrive here? Okay, number one, the 2016-17 budget, acting city manager Bilda proposed to transfer $164,000 from the CCD to the general fund. On June 6th meeting, the city council members Philbert, Gould, Nystrom, and Martin voted to transfer $500,000 from the CCD to the general fund. This is all from the NPU money, increasing the general fund allocation from 63% to 72%. Okay, fiscal years 2017-18 and 18-19 maintain that 72-28% split of the NPU payment, favoring the general fund. And last but not least, this year's proposed budget, as I said, establishes a 73% to 27% split of that payment, favoring the general fund. What we need to understand, and the position that I'm taking with this resolution, is that the CCD is not just about the downtown. It is all of these things that I listed, and in the interest of time, we see that we're talking about a much broader area than just the downtown. And I don't say that to the council, I say that to all of us, because we have this nasty little habit of thinking about the CCD as just the downtown area, and it is not. So here's what the result of the transfer, proposed transfer accomplishes. All right, so we see where that all three trend lines are now trending upward. So essentially we're establishing some balance and fairness to the allocation of the NPU money between the general fund and the CCD. As you can see, it flatlines and makes the trend lines parallel over the course of the last 5 years, if it were to be adopted in this year's budget. And the conclusions, very quickly, all right? So the transfer of $878,571, which is the amount in Resolution 18, restores that 2015-16 allocation to the 63-37% split. The proposed transfer from the general fund to the CCD begins to restore the equity and balance to the tax burden in the city that I've been talking about, and which is really the thrust of this resolution. And then number three, the proposed transfer from the general funds to the CCD increases the proposed mill rate by only 0.5 mils, while decreasing the mill rate in the CCD by 1.52 mils net. Sorry if that was a whirlwind. I said I'd be brief.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on this resolution? Alderman Burnham?
For those that were here with the legacy knowledge, can somebody walk me through like how the thinking behind that, behind the reduction of the TCD and the increase of the CCD over the years? Because I don't know why.
I'll try to be brief. During that budget cycle, the actual discovery of this subsidy at that time, which was proposed by then acting city manager, Mr. Bilder, which was a $2.9 million subsidy, that was not known by members of council. The history of it was initially the former city manager and comptroller began shifting pilot funds from the state of Connecticut to offset the cost of the fire tax district. At one point, I don't know the years, there was a mixing of funds from pilot funds from the state as well as funds from the NPU 10% allocation. In 16, the acting city manager proposed that all the pilot funds go back to the general fund and that the total sum of money transferred to offset the cost would come only from the Norwich Public Utility 10% allocation, and thus it really became more apparent of what was actually happening. There's a rationale behind this. They were looking at building and structures in the CCD district that were considered to be of a citywide benefit. Property at NPU, the library, in other words, utilized by everyone in the city. And so they came up with a percentage of tax valued assessment to offset the increasing costs of fire services downtown. They didn't share that with anyone. It all became apparent in that budget year. At the time, the members who voted felt, one, that a program of that nature should have been disclosed from its beginning, not from the point where it became too large to not have its own line item in a budget. In the very beginning, some of the funds from the pilot funds were so small it literally didn't show up. It was just so small. It's like that $21,000 allocation that we moved for seasonal recreation positions. You won't see the budget for recreation change, the bottom line. It's so small compared to the whole total, it really doesn't register. That's something the comptrollers have said in the past, but that's basically the history of it. There was an adjustment made at that time. And please recognize also that if you look at the budget, there are actually two budgets for the fire services. There's a set of positions paid for by everyone across the city. That is the management team, starting with the chief and other positions. And then there's the staff budget itself. That's why they're on two separate pages. I think it's like $2.3 million. I think it's about that same level this year. That's paid by everyone across the city. The former city manager, Charlie Whitty, made a determination those positions were a citywide benefit, and he administratively made that call, I believe, in 80-81. Now you're testing my memory. I was actually on that council when that happened. I hope that answers your question. If not, I'll try to do better.
Yeah, if you could send a bulleted list, because that was a little round and a little convoluted with the history for me to grasp.
I will do.
I'm not sure.
I'll be happy to do that.
How that, with the pilot distribution being so small, and then we end up with this great disparity between them. It's all right. Thank you.
If I may respond quickly, the pilot funds have been going down from the state of Connecticut, and thus their value as a means of offsetting the costs of the fire tax was diminishing every year. And I think there was a decision made by the acting city manager that reflected the shift in policy that was recommended to take it just from NPU's 10% allocation. That's my summation.
I'll follow up with you later, because
Sure.
it still doesn't really square.
I'd be happy to do that. Other questions? Yes, Alderman Philbrick.
The longer I sit here, the more confused I get. So there's no polite way to say this other than, who's been watching the hen house for the last how many decades? Every time I hear something, it makes me question the management or the mismanagement of this city for decades. It's like a shell game. I like to think that I'm reasonably intelligent, but I'm not getting any of this other than the acting city manager created collateral damage, and we're always playing catch up. We're always trying to fix things that shouldn't have happened to begin with, and it's very hard for me to make intelligent decisions. So if you all understand it, I'm happy, because I don't understand it at all. So by doing this, this will not change the NPU allocation, the bottom line. It'll still stay at the same amount, correct?
Yes.
because NPU has gone on record as saying they will not have any rate increases. So, but it will result in a decrease in the CCD mill rate and an increase in the TCD mill rate?
It is shifting that particular burden, yes, from the central core of the city to the town.
Okay, well, since we're freestyling here tonight, my last comment will be, I have always thought and continue to think that the tax structure in the city of Norwich is broken. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderman DeLucia. Second time.
Thank you. Alderwoman Philbrick, I agree with you. The tax structure in the city of Norwich is broken. And yes, at its deepest level, with its greatest impact, my intention here is to attempt to fix this a little. It's really intended to undo what can best be called an unintended consequence. I understand everything that the mayor has said. I've had that history lesson in the past, and I don't doubt it one iota. However, the result has been that it is 7.86 mils more expensive to be in the CCD, to live in the CCD, to own a business in the CCD, to own a motor vehicle in the CCD, than it is on the town side. And I don't know how, as a city, we can say that we are interested in economic development when most of the identified priority areas for economic development are in the CCD, and then hammer them with 7.86 mils of additional tax burden. Something needs to be done to balance this equation. And frankly, that's what Alderwoman Burnham and I are seeking to do with this resolution, is exactly that. To try to find at least get a step closer to some sort of balance. Now, I will say, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I have not been, to date, been a proponent of one city, one tax. And I would really have to dig in on that issue before I took a firm position, but I do want to make it clear that this action, this resolution, is not a step in that direction. It's a step in finding what's fair and equitable between the CCD and the general fund. That's what its intention is. I believe that's what it accomplishes. And I don't believe it's any more complicated than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Fails 4-3. 3-4, excuse me.
Resolution 19. Relative to tentative adoption of preliminary budget for fiscal year 2019-20.
Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderman Nash, second. Alderwoman Gould. The comptroller is tabulating.
I was actually hoping one of you guys would keep a track. I'm just kidding. So under this, after these amendments, the general fund mill rate increases by 0.02 mils to 39.97 mils. The TCD remains at 0.36 mils, and the CCD remains at 7.67 mils.
Could you repeat that again, please?
Yes, yes. Oh, and when I say remain, I mean the mill rates that are in the city manager's proposed 1920 budget, not the current mill rates. 2019-20 general fund mill rate, 39.97 mils. The TCD mill rate, 0.36 mils, and the CCD mill rate, 7.67 mils.
So nothing changed, well, other than the general fund?
By
Right.
point
By
zero.
point zero,
Yep.
yeah, okay. So
Correct.
It's all the same, so.
So it's 7.67 mils more expensive to be in the CCD.
7.31 mils. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there further questions of the comptroller? Are you all set?
I think so. You go ahead. This one.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Well,
Is there discussion on Resolution 19? Alderman Browning?
I wish to obtain more money for the schools. I'm not going to posture and say it has to be this amount or that amount. Obviously, I think that there hopefully will be further negotiations, but I can't vote for the tentative budget as it now stands.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion? Alderman DeLucia.
So we're going to underfund as it stands, we're going to underfund the education system by $3 million. We are going to ask the library, or I should say the Otis, to dip into their endowment principal, and we are not going to seek to find any sort of tax relief in the CCD or find any balance whatsoever. Yes, I'm a hard no on this resolution.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 19? Those opposed? The motion carries 4-3.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Pro Tem Nash, all those in favor? It's unanimous.